Today's video is going to be covering the new units Sylma and Louelle, both very exciting in their own way. Now, we also got a big surprise this week when we found out Rain is getting his EX job, and that there's also going to be a global first VC coming out that supports him and King Want. I'm going to talk about those two in a future video, so for now let's talk about the new girls' kits. As always, we need to thank warofthevisionscalc.com for the information used in this video. Okay, we're talking Sylma. Let's see you make fun of that pronunciation. People, cabbage, get out of town. I got it right. So she is a free unit. We're going to get her for free. You can farm her shards. That pretty much makes her a shoo-in, right, to EX, especially if you're new. But we'll take a look to make sure that she's worth your precious blossoms and your broadstones. So she gets 3 move and 2 jump. That's great. And she's a cost 60. Her main job is red mage, which means she gets jamming thrust. Yes. And then she gets Kodadama Wielder subjob and Green Mage subjob, which are both very interesting subjobs. And she uses the swords, but she's going to want swords that will increase magic attack, which is, you know, not very common. Slash attack up is not going to do as much for her. So her stats, we're going right to 120. She's free. If you're going to raise her, just go to 120. Or if you want to go to 199, or sorry, to 99, she'll work just fine, but I'm not going to show you those stats. So looking at this right off the bat, you see that her magic is looking really high. It's actually lower in terms of EX units, and that's fine because she's an MR, but because not many magic units are EX'd yet, it makes her very strong currently, but she'll drop off with time. The big thing here, though, is that her agility is 67, which is just crazy. So that's really good agility for an MR, and just for any unit at all. Her mastery ability is going to give lightning attack and then HP up, and then she gets even more agility from her mastery ability and then spirit, which is reflected in the diagram there. So that's really good too. Okay, looking at her resistances, she's strong against water, weak against earth, and she gets some pretty nice resists here. So slow, charm, and confuse. Those are all really good. She's weak to poison, which isn't the biggest deal in the world. And then her other resists aren't really that big of a deal. You know, they're not that great. Except for magic, because she can stack magic resist from her subjob, her passives and stuff. She'll be able to go pretty magic tanky if she wants to, but then otherwise she's just gonna, you know, die to a lot of stuff. Her TMR is the main reason to max her as quickly as possible, at least go to 99. This is a sword that gives you some attack, magic, and HP, but it gives you slash resist 8%. This is crazy on a tank. To be able to put this on them as their TMR slot, get 8% slash resist maybe, then you use the pod 153 for agility and single target resist, and then you use something like the new Brigandine armor for the AoE resist, or you use, you know, maybe you don't have to use golden armor. You can go, you know, smart coat or whatever it is. It's going to allow you to tech against more things, and I think that's just really cool. Okay, so it keeps getting better. Look at these passives. So your initial AP up, that's fine for red mages because they start with 50% AP, not whatever, like the 75% that other mages get. But then she gets magic increase 30%. That's really great. And then you see she has 2 sources of magic resist. So the first one is her red mage one, and it gets an agility buff. She gets more agility, and then she has another buff below that, and that's from the Kodadama Wielder, and you can get even more magic resist plus some spirit or water resist, and then she has the, you know, like that echoing whatever, so buff duration and debuff duration for her skills, which is great. So lots of good passives here. Obviously you're going to put the agility one on and get some magic resist, and then I think you're probably going to put the magic 30% one on as well. And then for counters, she gets 2 very good ones. So the first one is magic reflex, which is really solid, and then just the damage reduction for everything, which is good as well. So we'll see if she's in danger of getting one shot, and then if that's the case, then you probably just use the reflex one. But if this other skill is, like, you know, reliable to save her, then it's worth taking a look at. Her main kit is pretty awesome because it's red mage. I mean, there's not a lot on there, but what's on there is really good. So your Thundera skill is, you know, your weak AoE, but then you get a little bit of healing, and then JT jamming thrust. We got it. This is the best skill. It cancels some ability activation. It has a high potency. It is a large range with a 2 height difference, and it's not even that expensive for AP cost. This is the skill. And then we got Fast Cast, and Fast Cast will decrease the activation time for your allies for 4 turns. So if you're red mage, you don't see this often. For instance, if they cast this on like Victoria at the start of a fight, or any dragoon or any mage or whatever, then they could jump or cast really fast. And it's even better because in the EX upgrade, it becomes a defense 20 buff for that ally as well. So that's really good for somebody like Victoria that's going to run in, start jumping on people, and then needs to survive because she doesn't know how to stay put. Then we got Resistance Break, which is not only a chaining skill, a piercing skill, it's also a Spirit Break. This is great for PvE. And then she gets a really cool double resist skill for her EX25 skill. It's slash resist and missile resist 25%. She's screaming live PvP at me. She has the mobility of an extra jump. She has huge agility. She's got really good team buffs, and then she's got her own range as well. Her sub skills, there's nothing really crazy here. You know, you have Dispel and then Sleep. Then we can move on to Kodadama Wielder, and this is, your pretty standard, your move and jump, which she doesn't even need that much, your 100% hit tack, just for good measure, and then, your move attack high potency, and then a magic barrier. So you would use this if you were hunting magic teams or evade teams or anything. You could definitely just put this on in general because it's better than her other sub. And then we have Green Mage, and there's not too much to talk about here except for all this sweet PvE stuff. So being able to buff your, this is actually really good. This like bar thunder, whatever it is, and she gets 2 versions of it. They'll use this, right? And it's a good way to keep your team, together and then buff them up. When we get a mono lightning meta, when Cloud arrives, she'll actually be able to cast this on your team, and then that's pretty huge going into a fight with a bunch of lightning team or opponents. You could even sub this in live PvP, and then if you come up against an Evelyn Fred team, maybe try to get this off, although that's actually going to be pretty hard to do. And then you get Ruin for a non-elemental attack, and then your defense break, your de-protect, de-shell, and then Vitalize, very strong buff for consideration as well, although she has lots of buffs that you want her to cast. And then here's your Bar Thundera, which is just a larger AoE, higher TP cost. It's going to generate more AP. This is actually really good sub job to generate some AP early on, which could be important because she is a red mage and she's going to go just chew through that AP pretty quickly. Next up, we're going to do a few comparisons just to get an idea of where she is stat-wise. So Hallett is a natural comparison because he's also got that red mage jamming thrust capabilities, and he's actually a fast unit with high magic as well, and he's actually got higher magic than she does, and he also has the wind attack up, the spirit penetration, all this stuff, so he's actually going to hit probably a little bit harder than Sylma does, but Sylma has all of that, magic resist and all of that team support options that Hallett doesn't have, plus the 100% hit and all that kind of thing. But just in terms of damage, Hallett's still a little bit stronger. And then we can look at Yuna, and you can see that she's got more magic than Sylma does as well. And this shouldn't surprise you because she's a UR EX and she's at 120. But I still just want to give you that comparison of where Sylma's at. She is going to deal good damage to units, but she's not going to be a top level damage dealer. Next up is Louelle, who is a very exciting unit. I was actually considering pulling for her this week, but the Rain EX / new global vision card are really throwing me through a loop. I need to make a decision on what I'm going to do, but she is a UR Earth unit, brand new job called Scholar. She's got only 1 jump 3 move, and then she gets Rune Knight and Black Mage sub job, and she's going to have a new weapon type called Book. It's very cool, just like a nice little book there. And then her 120 stats, decent HP for a caster. She has good AP, very high magic there, and then high dex, decent luck, decent agility, and a little bit of defense. Her master ability is going to increase earth attack and earth HP for herself and her allies, and then she gets missile and slash resist plus 10% from her master ability. So we'll take a look at the comparison from her stats here to decide what we want to do with her. So keep in mind, she's not limited. We can work on her over a long period of time. So this difference column that I'm highlighting right now, this is the difference between 115 and 120 to decide whether or not you should take her all the way. Now, I'll tell you right now that MR and lower units seem to get the biggest amount of stats from 115 to 120. The game really wants you to max those units. URs, it's not quite the same, but sometimes it's more significant than others. So in terms of HP, it's not really a huge difference for me, but something that is a little more relevant is 58 magic. I'll definitely take that. I like to get that magic if I can. It's not a crazy amount that, like, if you're a free to play that you think I need to be really frugal, but I want this character, you could go to 115 for this. And then there's no added agility boost. Agility boost would be a huge reason for me to go to 120 personally. And then no other stats will be, you know, significantly increased here from 115 to 120. So the other question we have to ask, is her 120 skill any good? So taking a look at her resists, this is her strength is against lightning, and that's actually really interesting because, again, Cloud is coming with the FF7 remake collab, and there will be mono lightning teams, and they will be slash and projectile teams. So is she a counter to Cloud? We'll talk a little bit more about that soon, and then she's going to be weak to those wind attacks. And then she gets some blind resist, some disable resist, and confuse. So those second two are pretty good. The first one, I don't know, it's fine. And then I've included her mastery ability in these resistances. She's got a great slash and a missile resist, no magic resist, and she's weak to strike. Everybody's weak to strike, apparently. Her TMR is super interesting because it has a 35% luck buff for allies. This is crazy, not just, you know, helping out accuracy for everybody, but for evasion, you could slap this on somebody, and that's pretty big. It also nullifies blind and stop, which is not bad at all. Louelle has a lot of good passives, so we have to make some important decisions on what we're going to use. She has a defensive buff that also gives her some accuracy. Then the Rune Knight sub is going to give her Earth Attack 25 and then decrease her Wind Resist. Now this skill is from Scholar as well. It's going to upgrade a skill that we'll talk about later, but it's also going to decrease your activation time by 200, and this is important. We're gonna do some comparisons. She also gets magic 30% from Black Mage, and then from Rune Knight she gets increased spirit penetration 40, increased accuracy 20. So she could actually increase her accuracy 40% if you were coming up against evade, which is pretty cool. Her counter is like a magic counter, but you have to look closely at it because it actually has one less range than magic counter, and it has a 10% chance to increase its proc. So I will take the shorter range for the increased proc chance any day. That is really huge. That's definitely the counter I would use. The other consideration will maybe be this magic commutation. The problem with this one is that it only counters magic damage, although getting AP back is very nice. And then we have the regular magic counter down at the bottom there. Let's see what this new Scholar job is going to bring to the table. So this first skill is pretty awesome. It's your basic attack that has some good range and height, and it is going to become instant cast if you go to EX jobs, and then it will actually decrease AP 20. So I love this skill. It's her bread and butter, very strong. She also gets a TP skill that is going to have a cast time and will give you 15 defense and 100% defense debuff resistance. That means that if Orlando used crushed armor or Titus used a jet shot, they would not decrease her defense at all. Then she gets a skill that is going to buff her and her allies. It gives 25 Earth Attack, but that gets updated to 40 if you go to EX Job. And then it's also going to increase the Evocation Gauge boost by 60 for 3 turns for allies. And then single target resist 15 for 3 turns for allies. And if you go to EX Jobs, this becomes instant cast. So this is a very interesting buff for a bunch of reasons. It works if you have a mono Earth team. It works if you just want to give single target resist to your tank or to everybody. It works if you want to do something with Evocation Gauge. Now, when Mychin did this on his YouTube video, he showed that you could get the Evocation Gauge up like, I think it was like 4 turns earlier than usual or something like that. You can go check that out if you want. And that's kind of interesting if that's something that's important to you. Then she gets a huge attack here. Now this is really interesting. It's a strike attack, not a magic attack, but it is magic scaling. So it's going to be able to get around people with magic resist. They have to have strike resist for this. It also hits a super wide range and absorbs 30% of the damage done. Now here's the kicker here. It has a 240 cast time, which is really low. It seems like it's better than cast times like Flare that are 200, but it's actually the same most of the time unless you factor in cast time reduction. So it really is effectively, with no bonuses, a very slow, if not the slowest cast speed in the game. So we really have to think about how we want to augment this skill. Then she gets this skill here, which is a straight line and hits everybody in it, and it's going to decrease healing power by 40% for 3 turns, which is very significant. Now, if you equip that passive that reduces her cast time by 200, it also makes this skill instant cast as well, which is certainly very nice. And then if you take her to job level 25, you are going to get a buff again for allies that gives herself and her allies agility 20% and then restores their AP 15 times. So like whatever rate that is. So an AP restore is pretty strong, and it's not for self, it's just for allies. That means that she has a ton of TP skills that are worth investigating. We'll quickly take a look at her sub skills because they're not that, there's not that many of them. So the first one is another self buff, and this is going to increase your CT by 30, so you'll get your turn faster. And then it's going to decrease your casting time by 350, which is a pretty significant amount, and she can use this twice. We're going to go into cast times in a second and go over how that's going to work. But then she also gets an attack break, which is worth looking at because 1, it's a pretty strong break, and then 2, it's one of her fastest casting spells with a decent range and an okay potency. If you find that, her straight line attack, she can't line it up very well, or if you're finding that her big punch attack, people are getting in the way of it, your teammates or whatever, and she can't use it, then this might actually be a stronger version of that, that weak attack that she has that decreases AP. We need to have a quick chat about casting time because there's several options for you. So if you equip Louelle's passive to reduce her casting time by 200, that means the total casting time is 800. It will shorten that strike attack and the defense TP skill by 1 tick, so they'll go 1 tick faster. Flare will become 1 tick faster on Black Mage, and that straight line attack becomes an instant cast from the passive's ability. This all seems really appealing, and what you can decide is, okay, well, I'm not using this cast time reduction skill and I'm finding that my Louelle can never get her attacks off in PvP. I need to do something about that. Well, you can try putting this on. You could try, instead of using that passive, using this TP skill, and this is actually going to still just reduce that straight line and then the TP skill by 1 tick. Your straight line attack is going to have a cast time now, but that strike attack, it actually gets shortened by 2 ticks, so it's a little bit faster. Now keep in mind, you can't use Flare with this skill because it's on the sub kit. If you're using the skill, it means you don't have Flare. And then you have another option of using all 2 casting time reductions at once. It's going to make the total casting time 450. It essentially makes your entire main job cast at 2 ticks only, which is really, really fast. And that means that there's no way that, it's very hard for an opponent to get a turn in between your casting and take you out before you finish casting, or jamming thrust you, or whatever it is that they might do to you. So this is definitely a good option as well. Now, personally, I like this middle option, using her sub job and using this CT skill. It's going to make all of your skills significantly faster, but you're also going to save a passive slot so that you can go with that earth attack up and then the magic 30%, or maybe you want to go a little bit tankier with the defense, or maybe you want to go for the spirit penetration, but you don't necessarily want to go for the spirit penetration because she's going to get that later on in her LB. Another reason why I'm fine with with her using her Scholar sub-job is because her Rune Knight sub-job is just okay. So Drain Evocation is something that I like quite a bit. Getting 100% magic boost, healing yourself, and still dealing okay damage to lightning units or units that are weak to magic. It also has a good range. It's definitely something I wouldn't sleep on necessarily, but then you get your, Thunderblade or whatever, you get a magic 50% boost from the hazard spell, and then you get an Earth Break that's okay for PvE. But then you get the Thundaga Blade, and it's really strong. It's super strong. It's a different attack type. If you use Drain Evocation, you have 40% slash resist penetration. This thing's gonna slaughter opponents, but you have to get so close to use it, and that's kind of a bummer. Then for the Black Mage sub, I don't really see a huge reason to use this except for in PvE in the tower, except for Flare. Flare is always so strong. So you get Poison, you get Drain, and then you get Flare. And Poison and Drain can be really good in PvE, but really I think you would just maybe use this for Flare for a really high potency attack, but even then, I think that, her sub job's the way to go. Finally, we have her Limit Burst, and it's pretty good. So it's an okay range, but it has a huge potency, which you would upgrade because that's also going to upgrade the 40 spirit penetration for 3 turns herself. So because she's a caster, she can use this right off the bat if she gets close enough, and then you would be able to get that spirit penetration from somewhere, and you wouldn't necessarily need to use it on the passive ability. So I'm definitely a fan of this LB, and it is an LB that I would consider leveling up. So we'll do some comparisons for her, and the way that I'm going to do this first is talk about some units that are coming up soon, because I think that Louelle is, and now even more so with Rain and this VC coming out, is a victim of timing. I think she's an incredible unit. I think that it's really hard to pull for her right now, and that's okay because she's in the regular pool. You can get her later. So Moore is a unit that is coming out soon, and she is a water Kodadama wielder, and she actually is going to have a little bit more magic, and she's going to be more magic defense oriented, a little bit faster than Louelle, less, she doesn't have that defensive side of things, but she's going to have like 100% hit attacks and some pretty cool stuff. And then Helena is our next 100 cost unit, and she's also going to be very, very strong. A ton of utility on her kit. She gets things like calculator skills, she gets things like spellblade skills, and then she gets her own unique job that's very strong as well. And the other thing with Moore is that she's also has the red mage sub, so she gets jamming thrust, and I really like that as a magic user to be able to use that. It's pretty huge. The other thing that you have to take into account here is that both of these units get magic resist penetration, whereas Louelle can at most get 80% spirit penetration, but I don't see people stacking spirit like they do magic resist. People use magic tanks with high magic resist with a magic resist 30% or 36% buff from the Spellblade ability, and being able to penetrate that is really significant. Both Moore and Helena get it really easily on passives or mastery ability, so they can just naturally do that and deal damage, whereas Louelle is going to have a hard time getting around magic resist without something like Soul of Tham or like Garvel's TMR. So overall, I think that these two are going to be possibly a little bit safer. You can save up for them longer and go for things now, but I don't think Louelle is bad by any means. It's just hard with all these units coming up soon. One more comparison to make is Kilfei, because she is an Earth unit, an Earth mage, and she gets some resistances and some stuff as well. Now, the biggest thing to think about here is that Kilfei is not in EX jobs yet, whereas Louelle is. So it's fully, reasonable that maybe Kilfei would get 3 agility and would match Louelle, or maybe her magic is going to be higher than Louelle's is. But Kilfei has some other stuff that's really important to think about. Kilfei gets healing and holy and all this white mage potential. She gets a 50% physical damage mitigation buff that Louelle does not. So Kilfei is going to be just more of a tank. She gets the 100% hit attack as well. Whereas Louelle, yes, she's going to buff her allies more. She's going to get that defense buff, and she has really good natural resists. She's not going to be quite as tanky as Kilfei is, because Kilfei gets that barrier. Kilfei can heal herself and do that kind of thing, where Louelle is going to be primarily an attacker. So I think of her more as a magic bruiser. Whereas Killfate, and Killfate has hate generation. Killfate is more of a, like bruisery slash tank unit, and Louelle is more just of a magic bruiser type unit against physical damage specifically. So the question is, should you pull these units? Well, with Sylma, you're just going to get her for free. Should you build her up quickly? I think that, you maybe should. She's got a huge TMR, so definitely grab that. High agility, 2 jump, can buff your teammates' defense, their slash resist, their missile resist, jamming thrust, 100% hit, need I go on? And then the cons, she's low magic, but she's an MR. She's got weak resists, low HP, whatever. She's good to go. I think she's fully worth an EX. I think most players could get something out of her, and they would be pretty happy about it. And then for Louelle, well, she gets high magic power, one of the highest we have right now, and it's sustained. Like, she stays pretty strong for a while yet in JP. And then she gets magic strike and slash damage types available, single target and agility buffs, pretty good resists, all this kind of stuff. She's gonna possibly counter Cloud. I'll talk about that in 1 second. The biggest thing is that she's weak to magic, in that she has no magic resist. She didn't get that hazard slash on Rune Knight, and I think her range may be limited. In Mychin's video, and this might have been a map specific thing, she had a really hard time getting in range to attack people. So I think you have to also make some sacrifices to support her casting times, depending on what you want to do with her skills. I think she's going to be a more complex unit, but I think she's going to be such a fun unit. Now here, about Cloud. Okay, I promised I would talk about Cloud. I made a mono lightning team on WOTV, the JP site, and I made a full mono lightning team with all the buffs that Cloud can get. I made him as powerful as possible, and then I put in Louelle's resists, if she used her buffs, all that kind of stuff, and I saw, will Cloud still just clean her clock? Because if you don't know, Cloud gets 60% defense penetration, and he can break slash resist 25%. Even with all of that, Louelle was able to take 2 to 3 hits from Cloud before dying, using the damage calc. I would say dying in 2 hits is more realistic compared, with all the other units that will be around. But the point is that right now we're seeing a lot of like Cloud, Charlotte, and Frederica teams. So that's missile slash attacks, lots of Cloud sub-rangers that we're seeing in the JP PvP. So she can take all that type of damage, and she can take it. So I do think that she's worth building in anticipation of that eventual meta. Cloud is just such a popular character. We're definitely going to see him. So that makes me want to build her still. But for the general player, for the most players, I have to say she's a victim of timing. I think she is a skip. I think that if you go for Moore or Helena, you're going to get a better magic attacker. I think that with Helena, there's a ceiling on pulling for her. She's definitely going to be, a really good unit that you could save up more for. I think EXing Rain right now is going to be really huge with the next maps coming up being magic attack up. So overall, while I think she's a really good unit, I still personally might pull for her. I'm just going to tell people to be wary, because I think that there's a lot of work that goes into making her good. Now, just to kind of cement that point, take a look at the schedule here. So down at the bottom, we're right here. We're going to have some vision cards next week, some EX coming out, and then Helena might come then. We'll get the FF1 rerun. We're going to get the selection quests. Then we'll have more and another unit. Earth Selection Quest, Charlotte, some other units in FF7. So tons of stuff coming up. You have to make some really big decisions with your visiore, and that's why I'm recommending that you skip her unless you truly love her and want to use her. Okay. That's a lot of information. So hope that was useful for all of you. I'm really feeling my videos right now. That's kind of a cocky thing to say, but I'm putting a ton of work into them, and I'm feeling good about the advice that I'm giving. So I really do hope that they're useful to you. And if you like them, please share them with people, because I feel like the reach could be bigger than it is. But otherwise, I will see you all on Discord. We're getting more and more people joining. It's been super fun chatting with you. I'll see you in the comment section, and then just remember, make your own freaking decisions, okay? King Elda, he's a saint. He's telling you listen to Papa Elda, okay? See you all next time.